The default Heroforge color themes suck. Don't use them. Ever. I mean it. Okay, with that important message out of the way, let's move on to the actual guide. I've done 2 color guides in the past, and both of them were incredibly flawed and by now hugely outdated as well. Now, this guide will be all-encompassing, but I will still aim to keep it fairly brief and snappy, so you can look at the chapters at the bottom of the video if you want to skip ahead to certain chapters for specific tips on specific things. Regardless of whether you have Pro subscription or not, this video will teach you how to make the best looking colors in Heroforge and what options to use to achieve it. Now, enjoy! So, being the Giga nerd that I am, I obviously have Pro subscription, which gives me the convenience of this huge library here. But whether you are subbed or not, you won't need the library for any of the tips that I'm about to give you. That is purely a convenience and one you can likely live without. Now, as with all of my guides, I have to open this video with a very simple blanket statement that all of these default colors suck. If we go by the logic of Heroforge's default color library, then eyeballs are the size of anime babies, hair is a gooey liquidy chocolate pudding mess, cloth has enough fuzz on it to make you go blind, and wood... okay, well actually the wood colors are kinda okay, but you get the point! So how is it you do a custom color? Well, you go into color here, you go into paints, of course. Then at the top here you see all of these different categories, of course. Now we'll start with cloth and we'll take the most default one, Heroforge Banner Red. We'll slap it down on his cloak. Boop, boop. Now after you put it down, you go into mix right below paint here. Once you've gone into mix, you click on the color. Now we only have one, so there's only one we can click on. And as you can see, we can simply edit the color like this, and it will move the color around on the cloak, as you can see. But for the more advanced options, we need to click on the cogwheel here. Now you see we have low, mid, and high, all of which are different shades of red in this situation. More than that, we have roughness, fuzz, opacity, transparent plastic, metal, skin, glow, all of these things. And I will go over what all of these options are useful for, but for now, let's just quickly edit this one color. As I said before, with cloth you always want to lower the fuzz, so we'll pull the middle one down to 0, we'll pull this one down to 5, the high one up to 5 as well. Now if we compare quickly from before, this is the difference that fuzz makes. We are going to pull up the roughness because this is cloth. We do not want it to look all shiny. Now, as you'll tell, I haven't actually edited low, mid, or high yet. I haven't even touched the actual colors. All I've done is edit the actual options below color. Now we'll go into metal. I know this might seem weird, but we're gonna pull this one up to middle. We're gonna pull this one up to just below middle, and this one to the same thing. Now we've basically made this cloak half metal, right? But because the roughness is so high, it does not look shiny. It doesn't look like metal. And there you go. Now we've made our own custom color of the Heroforge Banner Red. So, what is the difference? Well, let's compare the two. With these small options you've seen me change thus far, even though the color is virtually the same type of red, if we compare the original to the new one, this is the difference. Now you yourself can be the judge of which of these you think looks better, but the point is all of these options make a tremendous difference to the colors that you make. So let's move on. So let's dissect what I did there a little bit. I took a default color that was close enough to what I wanted, a standard red cloth, and then whilst barely touching the red color itself, I fixed it by simply changing the options below it around. So roughness sliders, fuzz sliders, and metal sliders, and so on. And if you really want to make great colors in Heroforge, then you do need to learn these to some extent at least. But before we go in more into the advanced stuff, let's just quickly discern the difference between low, mid, and high in these colors. So here we have some very basic leather, right? And you can kind of see that the color of this leather is largely the same. You know, it's red and dark all around. But if I started making edits here, you would very quickly start to see which areas are low, mid, and which areas are high. So if I grab the high here on however you're supposed to pronounce this, if I grab the high here, and I quickly make this blue and I pull it all the way up. Now you can see which areas are covered by high. Of course, now again I can go into low instead. If we pull this one down and make it red again, now you barely notice it again. But if I take the low layer now, do the same thing, blue and bright, and now it's a completely different area that turns blue. And of course the middle layer, again I can do the same thing there, and yeah. So The mid layer is usually the primary layer on all of these things. Anyway, you've seen me do cloth with the special options on the red cloak, and now I will very quickly scroll through how you would do some other commonly used examples. You ready? Okay, let's go. Listen carefully, and you can pause this bit if you want to later, because I will go through it very quickly here. With leather, I pull up roughness on the low and the high, but I pull down roughness in the middle layer, because most types of leather need a little bit of shine. The color of the leather itself should mimic this, with a brighter color in the middle and darker highs and lows, so that the material looks thicker than cloth would. With cloth, as I said before, I put a little bit of fuzz on the low and the high layer, but nothing in the middle. Roughness is high across the board, and I use fairly high metal sliders around the 40-50 mark to increase the saturation, because most cloth looks nice when it's really vibrant. With metal, you have the benefit of full metal sliders, so you can pull down the roughness quite a bit if you want it to look nice and shiny, because it won't look liquidy when it's high metal. But I recommend making the high layer slightly lower roughness than the middle layer for that extra little bit of shine, but as always it depends on what kind of metal you're trying to create. Like something like jewelry is obviously very different from trying to make a plate cuirass. With eyes, you have a completely different set of options. I make sure to pull down the iris size from default to like 27, I darken the whites slightly, and then I make sure that the high color is a lot brighter than the mid and the low colors, because it really makes those irises pop. For hair, I once again actually use the fuzz slider. I know it isn't cloth, but fuzz is actually better for hair than cloth anyway. I also add a little bit of metal here too, but not a lot. Similarly to leather, I don't want it to be too vibrant, since hair shouldn't really look as saturated as cloth in most cases. I also sometimes lower roughness in the middle layer of hair if you want it to look kind of shiny like in hair commercials, like along with the fuzz, but otherwise it's high roughness across the board here. You don't want to do any of that ugly chocolate pudding hair that baseline Heroforge does. I won't go too much into things like wood or stone or bone or plants, because a lot of them follow kind of the same rules. Like wood, for example, should be done quite similarly to leather, but just sometimes with higher or lower roughness depending on if you're making like a crappy wooden shield or bark compared to like an elven bow. Obviously, you know, you gotta adjust accordingly. But then there's the niche things like glass, magic, or jewelry. Like with magic, you finally get to use the glow option for some really cool shenanigans, and with glass and jewelry, it's really just about finding the right combinations of metal, roughness, and vibrant colors. And there's skin. Okay, so look. Skin, I think, is definitely the hardest one, like especially if you're someone who strives for more realism in your models. It's really difficult to edit these, and because of that my own skin color library is full of colors which are actually fairly similar to the Heroforge defaults. You also can't really exploit metal or roughness sliders to cheat these into looking better, so you just kinda gotta fiddle with it until it looks good to you. But what I personally recommend is that once you have a skin color template that you like, you copy it repeatedly and you make small variations of it to fit into decal slots. Like for example, I personally have entire packages of decal dedicated colors for each skin tone that I've got saved. So things like eye socket colors, scar colors, lip colors, fingernails, burns, yada yada yada. And these cannot be made universally either. Like they need to be specific for each main skin color template or it will look all wrong. But again, I'll have some dummies at the end of the video with colors like that if you want to save them for yourself. So what are some other general tips whilst we're still at it? A common and popular Heroforge trick is to make both the low and the high layers of a color darker, and pulling up the roughness and metal sliders on those specific layers will add to that darkness even further. This will give you a kind of Darkest Dungeons effect where the color looks really gritty, and it works very well for cloths, leathers, woods, hair, even metal in some cases. Really low roughness on metal can often make characters look excessively shiny and sometimes almost soaked, and therefore I recommend not going overboard with it. But low roughness is especially good on things like jewelry and belt buckles, so I recommend separate colors for those kind of small things. Plastic color tips? I don't know, dude. I never make plastic. The skin toggle option is a dangerous thing to use. Like, I do have it enabled on most of my own skin tones, although not the orc or vampire or lizard ones or whatever. But this should sometimes be disabled if your model is shrouded in darkness or whatever, because it gives this really weird reddish glow to colors. And I especially recommend removing this on the guts color if you are using it to paint your characters in blood decals. But speaking of glows, obviously you don't have to use these only for magic, right? Like you can also use glows for eyes if you want to make spooky wizards, or in metals if you want enchanted armor or rune blades or whatever, or just to highlight certain things. But glow obviously won't print though, so you know, it's mostly there if you want to spice things up digitally. Now this tip might seem obvious coming from a low fantasy nerd like me, but I almost always darken and fade my colors compared to anything and everything you find in the baseline Heroforge library. Like obviously again, it's subjective just how bright you want your colors to be, and I also hate the other extreme where redditors just make their characters colors, nothing but gray and black. But sincerely, I just think this looks a whole lot better than this, okay? Like, I mean, look, just pull your colors down an itsy teensy tiny bit, okay, please? Just like with the skin color packages, I recommend making slightly darker and lighter variations of your hair colors that you can smack down onto decal hairlines and so on. Again, you make a color, you copy it, slight edit, and boom, good to go. Alright, that's enough sporadic tips for now. Let's move on to the actual color dummies I have prepared, and we'll do a little bit of presentation around those. Alright, so, as promised, we have 4 different color dummies based on 4 different skin colors. Now, believe me, I know there's a lot more skin tones than these 4, but as I said earlier, making these skin tone packages takes a long time with all the different decal ones. Like I said, it's 20 colors for every single one, so I have narrowed it down just a little bit. So, starting off, we have the dark skin color dummy here, which is this little package of colors here. Everything from, you know, dark skin bruise, blah, dark skin burns, dark skin blah blah blah. So if we go into mix, we can see a little bit of what's been used there. Now obviously I cannot utilize every single of these 20 different skin color decals on one character, which is why you'll see some of the colors unused down here, like dark skin red brow, dark skin under eye, dark skin eyelashes, etc. These are all the colors that I couldn't fit in, but as you can see, I've also cluttered them up with like scars and bruises and whatnot, just to give them a little bit of extra, and there's also stuff underneath all of this armor. And as for the armor, I've tried to include a few more of like the essential colors that I want to give away in this. I mean, like, I have the black leather color down here for the boots, I have beige leather for the gloves here, I have like a red leather sword scabbard that I think looks very nice, and then I also have 3 of the most fundamental cloth colors here, that being the red cloth and the blue cloth and the yellow cloth. And then I also have here, although they are unused, I have faded and gritty versions of all these. I have gritty yellow cloth, gritty blue cloth, gritty red cloth, etc. I've also included 2 of my most essential sword colors here, and yes, there are 2 colors on this sword, because there is a decal here at the very end of it. As you can see, it's like faded, so if I take another color and I put this on, yeah, now you can see the fade a little bit more clearly. And these are called sword steel, which is the main one used here. Don't mind this ugly dagger hilt, that's just to fix some clipping because I wanted to stack gloves. So like I said, I have the sword steel color, and then I have the sword steel edge, which is like a brighter version of it. So the difference between these 2 is like, yeah, now you can see which one is sword steel and which one is the sword steel edge. Now these 4 color dummies will also have the main like 4 hair colors, that being like brown, black, blonde, and red, and this one has obviously the brown hair, and for that I have 3 different colors. I have the base brown hair, which is like the in the middle here. I have the light brown hair, which I put on the decal on top, and then I have the dark brown hair, which is like the color here on the sides, like the deepest version. And if I remove the decals altogether, then you will see what it looks like if I only have the base brown hair. So like this is the difference if I flick it back on and on. And it's not a huge difference, but these little details add up in the long run. Now as a final note, this dummy also has a few colors which aren't really part of any package. I mean, like, you have this like bright white steel plate color here, and then we also have like a little golden trim for that as well. But the main things you want to take from this, really, I would recommend, is just like the skin colors. Then if you want to pick up these other colors, like the jewelry colors or the sword colors or whatever, that's all up to you. Now, dummy number 2, the light skin color dummy we have here, which is in this case we also have blonde hair on it. So again, we have 3 different blonde hair colors, and again I put this character in green color this time because I'm trying to give out like all the main different cloth colors, like red, blue, yellow, and now green. So we have 3 different kinds of green here. I've labeled them navel green because it like leans a little bit into blue. Now, just like before, we have 20 different skin colors, however only like 11 of them are actually used, and the next 9 are all down here and they're not actually being utilized on this model. I went for much grittier colors otherwise. I mean, we have like these gritty cloth pants, we have like gritty leather boots, we have a gritty plate here, which this metal packet, unlike the white steel of the previous one, is labeled like forgotten armor. That's why it looks so like the roughness is like way higher, etc. And it has these orange like rusty undertones to look crappier. And then we also have a nice bone color here if anybody wants that. Similarly to before, we also have 2 different kinds of sword colors here. We have the gritty sword steel, and then we have the gritty sword steel edge, which again is just a brighter version of it. Even if you're making a dirty sword, I recommend doing this. And instead of a brown gambeson color, like these cloth gambeson colors is something I use a lot. And on the previous model we had the brown gambeson, and this time we're using the beige gambeson, right? Because I'm trying to diversify between these models just to give out as much as possible. And as a final note, I mean, we had brown eyes on the previous character. This time we have blue eyes, and then I'll give out green eyes on the next one, and so on, so on, and so forth. Now here is our 3rd color dummy. Now you might notice by now there's like 3 colors, which every single one of my models else has, and that's obviously stage border, because like that's what I have down for the actual bases, whether they have anything on them or not. And then of course gums and teeth colors. Now they really don't matter that much, you don't see them on the majority of models, but I really just I get annoyed if I haven't actually colored that part of a model. It just bothers me. So now this is the pale skin dummy, and on this one I have a lot of edgy colors. So again, as always, I have all the 20 main skin colors here. Now a lot of them are unused again, because some of these colors are split up between different types of characters, right? Like something like this pale skin contour here. This is a skin color that I use specifically for like cheekbones on like noble characters or whatever. Someone who would realistically put a bunch of makeup on themselves. Anyway, aside from that, we have ginger hair colors this time around. So ginger hair, light ginger hair, dark ginger hair. The dark ginger one is unused in this case because I didn't find any use for it. As for the eyes, we have a bit of a hybrid eye this time around between blue and green, which is why again it like this color wheel here, like somewhere in between like 40 and 50 is when you get these like really nice like navel green colors. Anyway, aside from that, we have a lot of blacks and grays here. So we have the main iron steel color for the armor here that I use. Like this is probably the most basic gray that I have, and I would recommend using it for a lot of things. I mean, it's just like gray. We have the iron trim, which is like these lighter edges here, which have slightly lower roughness to look a little bit shinier. We have this rich dark leather for the actual tunic here, and a basic gritty black cloth for the hood here, which is just like one of my oldest colors. It's like a typical black with like gray overtones and brown undertones. And that's it, really. Nothing more complicated about this one than that. Now we have the final tan skin dummy, and in this case you can finally see me use, like for example, one of the more niche skin colors, which is the tan skin contour. So if I take the base skin color and I swap it onto this cheekbone decal, you'll see the difference here between having it and not having it. In any case, aside from that, this one again doesn't have anything fancy. I mean, this one I'm mainly using to give away things like black hair or these like green yellowish hybrid eyes, or more importantly like all these jewelry colors. Like we have sapphire, emerald, diamond, garnet, amethyst, and of course a ruby here, and as well as the golden jewelry color. We also have this silver jewelry in these like chains here, and of course just my basic standard black hair color here as well, which as per usual has 3 different ones, and then we also have the shiny black eyelashes color here on top of it. Aside from that, I have given this model my purest like dark black color. It's I call this one Nosferatu cloak, and I use this one when I need a character to just have something that's like pure black cloth. Now you may wonder, why do I not go even more like heavy with the metal to make it even darker? But like if you if you pull the metal all the way up when the color is all the way into black, then it turns into like a black void, which is not what you want. I also have a unique color here, this purple silk. Now silk is really weird in Heroforge, because basically you're making metal, but you're like you can see like the metal sliders here are all the way up, but it's still technically a cloth. And the way you do this with colors like these, like if I put this onto the rest of the dress, the way you keep this from looking like pure metal is kind of difficult, but you need to utilize fuss first of all to make sure it still looks like cloth, and secondly the roughness sliders on both the high and the low need to be high enough that it doesn't, because if I pull these one down to, yeah, exactly, now you can see those shiny metal edges. Now this looks like it's either soaked or it's just pure metal, but if you keep the high layers on high roughness, then the middle layer being low roughness can still look shiny without it looking like actual metal. It's a really fine balance, but yeah, you can use this purple silk as a template to create more silk colors for yourself of different colors if you like. It works just as well with, I mean, red or green or, you know, blue, whatever else. Like this template can be applied for anything pretty much. Anyway, yeah, that's it for this one. Now, after you saw me slapping on those silk colors, you might be asking, why am I not sharing every single color that exists here, right? Because I obviously have more colors than I have on these actual 4 models. Partially, there's just too many colors in my library for me to be able to share everything that I have, and frankly, I am also going to be making future videos on more niche types of these colors. Like for example, I have a few lizard colors down here, like these reptilian skin colors. I'm probably going to be dedicating something specific to this in the near future. But more than that, a lot of these colors are things which to me are attached to my own world building. Like for example, you have this red cloth that's applied to this character's cloak, right? And then you have a very slightly different one called Eastern red cloth. Now, that Eastern is purely referencing something else in my own world building, and it's a very marginal difference between these 2 reds, so there's not really any point in me cluttering this video up to throw out all of these extra colors, which to you will only look like tiny little variations or something, which doesn't really have any significance. I'm trying to make this as, you know, accessible and as basic as I can, while still providing some generally advanced tips and colors for you to use as starting points to then create your own with. Like I have given you black cloth, I've given you black leather, brown leather, leather, brown cloth, beige leather, blue cloths, gritty blue cloths, red cloths, yellow cloths, green cloths, blah 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 blah. You know, gray metal, white metal, gritty metal, shiny metal, golden jewelry, silver jewelry, a bunch of different gems, 3 different sword colors, and of course mainly I've given you the 4 different hair colors, 4 different eye colors, and the 4 different skin colors, which you can use, you know, go wild with that. This is also intended to be more of a guide than a handout video, right? Like, but the one exception I made to that is the skin colors, where I just gave you pretty much everything I had, frankly for no other reason than it really just sucks making those 20 extra decals, and I don't want to put anyone else through that. But yeah, have fun figuring out where they all go. I didn't really go in depth on where you should put them all, so you'll have to figure that out yourself, but you know, it's not very difficult. They all have labels. Anyhow, I hope you found these tips useful, or these models useful. Links to the models will be in the description below next to the Discord link, and if you liked this video, then as always, please press like. If you didn't, then by all means press dislike, and goodbye!